Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor. Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show, bringing you another really awesome guest today. Today we are continuing what I call our virtual road trip around the world. We're headed back over to Israel and have the honor of being joined today by Brigadier General Uri Oron, who is the Director General of the Israel Aerospace Agency. That's a national agency that operates under the auspices of Israel's Ministry of Innovation, Science, and Technology, and they have broad responsibility for initiating, leading, and coordinating all activities of their civilian space program in Israel. Director Oron earned a bachelor's degree from Auburn University at Montgomery, did his master's degree in distinction from Haifa University with a focus on national security policy studies. And then he also went on, he's a graduate of the USAF Air Command and Staff College, United States Air University, and of course, Israel's National Security College. Dr. Oron served as a fighter pilot for multiple decades with command and operational experience, over 32 years in the Israel Air Force, served in various positions, including Squadrons Wing Commander and also head of Israel's Air Force Intelligence Directorate. And prior to joining the Israel Space Agency, he also managed operations in a really interesting Israeli artificial intelligence startup, accumulating a variety of experience there and ultimately managing complex systems, implementing these state-of-the-art technologies on a broad scale, has led innovative projects in the space field, not only in collaboration with the Israeli Defense Forces, as well as broadly the defense industry, while also interfacing with various folks in the political echelon there in Israel. We're excited to have him with us today. A lot of really interesting themes to get into today. Brigadier General Uri Oron, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Thanks for having me, Ira.
It's great having you. I really looking forward to going through your story, reading up about you, and a little bit about how sort of your passion for all things space started a few decades ago on a small rural kibbutz. I think it was Apollo 16. You were watching it on black and white television back in the day. Take us back to the beginning of the story, or if you would, to talk about what started out this amazing journey you've been on.
Yeah. Those days in the place where I grew up, it's a small kibbutz. It's a very small community, and actually, back in those days, I think we had only like 2 or 3 TVs total in the whole kibbutz, and all of the people were gathering and watching. There was only one channel in Israel at those times. I'm talking about the beginning of the 70s. So there was only one channel. Everybody's watching only this specific channel. And as a young kid, I remember my mother took me to watch something. I don't really remember the whole thing, but I remember a very, very unique picture of people walking on the moon. And I was at that time the age of 5. And I think that was the first time that something like that fascinated me. And actually, I was starting to get very interesting in space, just because of the curiosity of things. things that moves kids forward, things that all of our kids are dealing with. The fact that there was a man walking on the moon seems to me like something incredible. And I was at the age of 5, and I was started reading things about Apollo and all that kind of stuff. And actually, what I've learned is that if you want to be an astronaut, you've got to be a pilot.
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, so I need to be a pilot, and I think from that on, the story begins of connected my personal passion to things and what brought me, in a very mysterious way to the place or to the seat I'm sitting here right now with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for the audience, I mean, I know obviously we do an international show. I'm sitting here on the East Coast of the United States, and I've profiled a lot of sort of our aerospace ecosystem here, sort of from a top level perspective. Obviously, we have our Air Force and our NASA and lately Space Force, of course, which straddles both areas, and then various other agencies, whether it's NORAD or missile defense or what have you. Um, for the listeners, and just sort of lay the groundwork here, and we'll get into this agency in a bit, but give us a little bit of sort of the layout today. I mean, obviously you have the Israeli Air Force. Clearly there is the important connection there to the potential of space. We're all familiar, obviously, with Iron Dome and sort of missile defense technologies that are on the cutting edge. Walk us through a little bit of that structure at first, if you would, and then we will then segue from that into all things Israel Aerospace Agency.
So again, the air is one of those domains that basically you need to be there if you want to control technology, if you want to influence the environment you are in. Now we're talking about commercial stuff, but of course we're talking about defense and security.
Yeah.
So being in the air is serving a very, very specific goal to have a control over the environment that will enable you to do things. Now, having said that, which is obvious to everyone, having said that, Israel understood that controlling the air is extremely important to us, because without that, we won't be able to have the influence we want to have on our environment. So the Israeli Air Force, going back to what you're saying, the Israeli Air Force, along the days and along the years, have a very, very unique role in defending the nation, not only skies, but defending the nations. Having said that, a lot of budget, money, people are allocated to this specific force. Mm-hmm. And that's, along those years, that's what brought the Israeli Air Force to be a very, very crucial part, not only in the Israeli Defense Force, but also in the whole community, because a lot of things came out of this perspective, out of this strategy of controlling this very, very important domain. Mm-hmm. You just highlight the Iron Dome. I have the honor to be part of the group that developed the Iron Dome, and we think this is part of defending the nation's skies. So again, what you start to see is the connection between allocated specific resources to affect the whole nation. Mm-hmm. Now, where space comes to the picture is, we understood that space right now is, again, it's a new domain. Now, I call it the fifth domain, because we have the land and sea cyber, mm-hmm. and then came space. And what you can see is happening all around the world, that space is basically divided from air. You can see more and more countries. Now, I just remind you, in the US, you have the Air Force, just born after World War II, 1948. Okay? It used to be the Army. And then they separated the air from the Army. And now what they've done is they separated the space from the air. So what we can see that those are basically these physical domains that turn to be, an operational domains. In Israel, we are not there yet. Space is still part of the Air Force or is part of the air attitude. Now, what we start to see is this separation between air and space. And all of us start to realize the importance of space, not only for the security, but also for being a very modern and developed country. You need to have some access. You need to have some kind of a control in this specific domain. Mm-hmm. So what you can see is the story goes from being a part of the let's say the strategic environment of the nation towards a separate domain that have a specific use, have a specific role in the nation development.
Excellent. And so, moving on now to Israel Space Agency is mentioned, in the bio. It's part of the Ministry of Innovation, Science, and Technology. And I was reading the press release from when you took responsibility here, and it makes some interesting points in here. Not just talking about, okay, it's an extraordinary opportunity, but as we always see Israel as sort of this startup nation. You want to become sort of this startup in space tech, and you're pointing out, I guess similar to again the U.S. While we have the SpaceX and obviously the aero defense conglomerates, the Lockheeds and all that stuff. Israel, has had, its three major defense giants, Elbit, ISI, and Rafael. But you want to, obviously create a much broader ecosystem in terms of everything space tech and all the things that are, potential to come out of that. And I like to see the parallels there. Walk us a little through the ministry, the agency, and a little bit, and we'll get into specific projects in a bit, but a little bit of what sort of the day-to-day responsibilities of Director General are for something of this nature.
Okay, great question. The Israeli Space Agency was established exactly 41 years ago, January 83. Okay, now that was an outcome of the peace agreement with Egypt.
Yep.
Okay, because the nation realized that, again, we don't have the Sinai Desert. We need to have some kind of a capability to look and understand what other people are doing, and we need to do it ourselves. So let's do it from space. And that was the born of the Israeli Space Agency. Now, many years it was related to, let's say, international cooperation and some kind of research and development that regarding to space. That was the focus of the space agency actually for at least 2 decades, even 3 decades, I think. And then came the huge transformation that all of us experience, and what we call the new space age. Where access to space become more and more cheaper and more easier, and then the window of opportunity was open. Because if we are talking about the size of the market, if we are talking about $1 trillion market within a decade, that was not there 20 years ago. That was not there 40 years ago. And my role basically is saying that I'm responsible to meet the national goals in developing space capabilities, civilian space capabilities in Israel. So the question here is, okay, so what are those goals? And the first goal is to establish a sustainable space ecosystem in Israel. By saying that, it means that it needs to be big enough in order to be sustainable. And the reason for that is because is not only what happened in the world, because we can in Israel, and I will elaborate on that in a second, but Israel is part of a very small club of 12 countries that have the independence to do things by their own. Okay, so what I'm saying, sometimes there is not a lot of countries that you can ask something and there will be people regarding to space, and there will be people from the country that will tell you, I did that, I know how to do it. Okay, so the potential in there is here to develop a sustainable space ecosystem. The second goal is to promote science and technology in the field of space from the government point of view. Okay, I'm not controlling the universities. I'm the one that's supporting, sometimes guiding them. Okay, but it's part of my role is to strengthen the capabilities of the Israeli Academy regarding to space. Third role is to strengthen the international position of Israel in the field of space. Now, as you know, in space, everything done in cooperation between nations. This is something that you need to move forward. For the fourth goal of the agency is to build the next generation, to bring space to kids and youth in order to develop the ecosystem, the commercial ecosystem, as well as the academy ecosystem. So this is basically our four goals. Now, going back to the ministry, yes, we are part of the Ministry of Innovation, Science, and Technology, because this is actually historic from historical point of view. That's where the government decided to put space 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of sense into it. But we are part of this. We are part of this ministry. But in many ways, we are acting toward with our strategy and with our guidelines. And what I put as my first goal is to build a sustainable commercial space ecosystem in Israel, mm-hmm. because I think we can do that. It's not easy, and I think we'll maybe in a couple of minutes we'll elaborate the role of the government in that regard. But I think when you look at the innovation spirit in Israel, I think you can connect the dots between things that we've done in other areas and the potential that we have in space. But it's still infant. Government must be involved. Otherwise, it won't grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and clearly, and again, we will put the link not just to the agency, but to there are the many projects that you're involved in, not just industry related, but academia, and then of course the international collaborations, which you elaborate with a lot of detail. And so we'll put the links to those. But I thought we could have some fun and again walk through some of these as you were just talking again about sort of the integration here, the responsibility of a collaboration, government involvement. I thought maybe an interesting one to point out and start off with would be this really interesting AstroRad project, sort of started by a small Israeli company called STEMRAD, which again focused on radiation protection. And obviously this is a topic that we've talked a little bit about on past shows. Clearly, once you get up there, there's a lot of nasty stuff flying around that you don't see, and it affects us in terms of our blood renewal and cancer and all sorts of other organ systems. And here's a really neat thing, because you have a startup, you have your organization, you have various collaborations with companies like Lockheed Martin, like the NASA relationship. Walk us into this story, because I think it's a nice little, again, example of how you've brought all the pieces required for something like this. And again, also the dual use component is rather intriguing as well.
And I think that's a great example to the story. Now, it starts again, like every good and nice stories. It starts with a dream or with a passion. Actually, I think the right word is passion of Oren. Oren is the one that runs STEMRAD. The idea is his, and he built STEMRAD on the basic idea of defending first responders to nuclear disasters.
Yep.
Now, combining that to his passion to space and what's happening in space, he came out with the idea of adjusting his basic protection vest to the use in space. Now, what we've done is basically connect the dots as a space agency with NASA and with the budget and put it into the framework of, okay, let's not just doing it together, but let's doing it together for a specific goal of protecting astronauts in deep space.
Yep.
Now, what we've need now, they build it and they test it, the vest on the ISS, but the ultimate goal is to send it to the deep space through or via Artemis. Now, what we've done is, again, is as a space agency, first of all, to convince ourselves this is a very good idea, and then go to, of course, Stemrad was the leading force over there, but Ernest and NASA to understand that this is probably the most imminent answer to the question how to protect astronauts. Now, it was on the Artemis 1, on the Orion, the vest. The test came out. The results are great, and we understand that probably this could be one of the things that Israel will contribute to the Artemis effort. Now, again, here comes the story of taking one thing that was actually developed for first responders down in Earth, adjust it, put it in space, and bring value to other things. Now, this is exactly the type of things that I think we can do good in Israel. This is a great example of how to adjust things, and actually do it relatively quickly, and came out with a very, very good results. So I think that's a great example of how you can take one thing, adjust, align it to what you need, and then move forward. And there's still work need to be done, but it's a great story. That's a great example of things that we can do in the very near future.
Absolutely. And another one that again, I was, looking at some of the parallels and some of the discussions that, I've had previously on the show. One of the guests I had from Harvard was Avi Loeb, talking about, he introduced us to the concept of cluster satellites and sort of cluster ships. Let's say not everything that we send up there has to be gigantic starship-sized stuff. You have this really interesting program that, again, now this is an example of a really cool academic collaboration between your agency, the ministry, and of course, in this case, Technion, which is a premier institute in Israel, Professor Grafil's group in aeronautical and space engineering, talking about nanosatellites, and that there are really cool things that we can do in space in terms of these smaller agents, satellite agents and so forth, that not only we put up there, but can communicate and do really cool things in clusters. And talk a little bit about this one, because I also obviously see connections to, we'll talk about some of your experience in AI and so forth a little later on, but take us into Samson, if you would.
Well, I will take you to Samson and to another project that we call Tevel.
Yep.
Because I see the connection between those two projects. The basic idea was to build small satellites. I'm using this because it's relatively, this is the size. It's 1U, 2U, 3U, but building small satellites and make them or fly them in groups. Now, the basic idea is, okay, if you can fly them in groups and control them, then you can do some cool things, because they're small. They don't have to be big, and you can connect the dots between specific satellites that are hovering over different areas in a very, very similar time. So you don't have to build those big things. You can put things on those small satellites, and by that, you use them, again and again, hovering over basically the same spot. But in order to do that, you need to navigate. You need to control them. The basic idea of Samson was, okay, let's see how we can do it, how we can control it, how we can navigate. So that was the basic idea. And when we go down to the numbers of how cheap it is, that brought us to another very very cool program which we call Tevel. Tevel is the Hebrew acronym for Student Building Satellites. Talmidim Bonim Lavyanim in Hebrew.
Okay.
Now the basic idea is to take a group of young kids, actually 10 and 11th grade. Okay, that is, they're not students, they're high school students. Okay, 10 and 11th grades. It's a 2-year program. You take a group of 20, 25 kids. By the end of that program, they're launching a satellite from Cape Canaveral. Okay, we've done it with 8 groups. On January 2022, we launched 8 nano-satellites. Each one of those was built by a different group of high school students. Okay, there were Jews and Arabs, secular, Orthodox, girls, female, males, everyone. And what you see, and it goes back to my personal story, you can see the light in their eyes. You can see what happens when you put them in front of them a project that sometimes it looks like it can be done, but they made it. And the most awesome thing was not just to the countdown when we launched it from Cape Canaveral. The awesome thing was 4 hours after launch, receiving the first data from space back in their homes, back in their schools, when they sit together in Yerucham, in the south part of Israel, and they're receiving the first signal with their families, with their teachers, and with the community. Imagine the effect of those youngsters at the age of 17, responsible for a beep from a signal coming from space, explaining that to the whole community. The effect of that is amazing. So what we've done is taking the basic concept of building small satellites, relatively cheap, by young students, and affect the whole community. Now, the whole project is basically sponsored by the Israeli Space Agency. Right now, we are in the middle of the second program with 9 different communities. Okay, they just yesterday, no, 2 days ago, they have the PMR, the project management review. Those kids was running the PMR in front of the teachers in Herzliya, explaining the status of those specific satellites. So you bring space to those kids, lighten their eyes, and bring them to the future like that. It's an amazing program.
Absolutely. Why didn't they have this when I was a kid? I would have achieved so much more. No, but that's an awesome story. And again, yeah, I mean, I'm all about inspiring the next generation, and the fact that they have the ability to be involved in projects like this, no matter who they are, it just is a fascinating example how far we've come with this at that level. So that's so impressive.
And actually, I want to make it international, because I believe that if those kids will be able to talk, have this Zoom meeting, once 2 months with a group of kids in Philadelphia, basically doing exactly the same things, but just having a Zoom meeting. Okay, you have this problem, we've solved it through that. You have these problems, we solve it through another different concept, and they just start talking about the same thing that they are doing. And they could be in Philadelphia, they could be in Miami, they could be in Abu Dhabi, they could be in Cairo. They could do things together. And this is, again, we know that space community, the space connect people. What we can do relatively easy is just put them on the same field, playing the same game, and winning together.
Yep, absolutely. Wait, let's talk about one more that this resonated with me, because I was a kid when 2001 came out, and saw that potential, what potentially having even float around near Jupiter. But I guess, a project that sort of encapsulates all of these things in terms of international collaboration, uh, academia in Israel, obviously small private companies, is the fact that you recently joined the European Space Agency's JUICE cooperation, or which stands for Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, where I think by 2030, we're expected to arrive by all three, Ganymede, Callisto, and Europa, measuring a bunch of cool things, taking pictures, doing all sorts. Again, Jupiter is one of those, again, that has, um, you know, all right, we can see Mars, not that far, but Jupiter is one of those. Okay, it's the next one, but a little further. Been part of science fiction lore for a few decades now. Wiseman, various other institutes, small companies. Take us a little into what you're hoping to get out of the JUICE program, if you would.
And it's exactly connected. I mean, I think all the four goals that I just highlight as
Yeah,
the Israeli Space Agency goal, but we start with science. Okay,
right.
science probably. I mean, this is the main goal, the main target of JUICE is of course science. And again, naturally, the Israeli Space Agency, we don't have as budget as ESA have or as NASA have, but we realize that it is very, very crucial for us to be part of such an amazing effort.
Mhm.
So what we've done is we've joined this project from a technical point of view. We joined the project by supplying the time measurement of the system. There is a small company named Accubit.
Yep.
What they are doing is basically they produce a very, very accurate and very, very reliable watches, atomic watches. Basically, they produce the time element of the whole measurement of the whole system. Because of the distance, time is the time signal have to be very, 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 very accurate. So we are supplying, well, they are accurate, they are supplying the time element to the system. Now, one can think that it's a very small element, but it's a very, very crucial element. So this startup or this small company, Accubit, actually, supporting by us, we basically funded, but it was their capability that actually joined the project. So that was one thing. The other thing is what you just highlighted about the Weizmann Institute. They are doing the research.
Yep.
Professor Oron is leading the research. So what you can see is by joining this amazing project, we serve at least two goals. We promote science. Okay, we're gonna be a very crucial part of the scientific effort that will be related to JUICE through Professor Aronson and the Weizmann Institute. And we support the build-up of the ecosystem by supporting this company.
Mm-hmm.
This is and that's an example of how we do things in the Israeli Space Agency. But it also serves strengthening Israel's position in the international arena,
Right.
because it's an international effort. So in that's again, it's another example. Space is hard, space is difficult. You cannot do things by your own, at least not a country as Israel. But if we join to others, that's important, and that strengthens our position. It also affects the next generation, because when in 28, 29, 30, the outcome of JUICE will start to flow, and people will start to get the pictures, to get the science out of it, that will inspire young kids as well. So you see the connection between, you take one project, but it's affect all. And this is something that I'm doing. When I'm running this shop, I'm trying to look at everything that we are taking got to affect at least two, and sometimes all the four goals. It's got to affect more than one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you got to affect more than one goal, because otherwise we are wasting our money.
Right. Right. Say a few more words. I mean, because you're collaborating with the NASA's, ESA's, and so forth, but you're collaborating with everybody else as well. And I think this is really important to let the audience know. You signed a recent agreement with Azerbaijan for joint space industry development. I had Salam Al-Mari on from the UAE's Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. I know you're working with them, I think, to get back to the moon. I think space in this context is, you know, uh, let's just say a lot of the issues that we concern ourselves with on a daily basis down here sort of dissipate a bit, and we all, maybe gets us focused on more commonalities and common goals. Say a couple more words about sort of the because you're doing a lot more in terms of reaching out to the international community and collaborating much more extensively. Talk a little bit about this, if you would.
Yeah. So again, in space, because space is still hard.
Right.
Yeah, it's cheaper, it's easier than it used to be, but it's still hard. And always you are in lack of resources.
Right.
And the third phenomena is, yes, people want to join, people want to have things together. So and for us it's extremely important. So what we are doing is we are trying to find out what country is aligned with our interests. And what we find that there is a lot of countries actually that are totally aligned with our interests. And what we need to do is to find those it's got to be, by the end of the day, it must to be have you must have something concrete.
Right.
Okay, it cannot be only words. So what I'm seeking is to have joint research, or to have a joint project. Now, what we are doing is, first of all, we are trying to come out with ideas, and they could be in the area of science. Right now, hopefully we are heading towards another joint project with CNES, with the French. Okay, it's good. It's probably going to be very scientific project. But again, we'll do it together. We are trying to build another cooperation with the UAE, but it's got to be, again, going back to joint research.
Yep.
The fact that there are two professors, one in the UAE and one in Tel Aviv, sitting together, working together on the data
Yep.
came out from the Venus satellite, that bring a better science, but it also bring a better cooperation between nations. So this is something, and again, the role of the government is to connect the dots.
Yep.
To tell them, okay, this is the framework, this is the story, this is the budget, let's do it together. The outcome is good for science, it's good for people, it's good for nations. So, and this is, and we are doing it. I can tell you on a daily basis. Just an hour ago, came out from the same room I'm sitting, the lady that runs the international affairs, where we were talking about another country that we need to have again something that will be concrete. We'll have a joint project. Everything that we are doing must be connected to other countries or to other entities. It could be companies as well. But it's a fundamental component of what we are doing in Israel.
No, that's again, I see that as such an important component of this, and in many ways, it breaks down the barriers and allows conversation. As you were saying, if we can converse about these things, we can solve all sorts of other problems. But I'll leave that at that.
Yeah, but it's again, it's part of how you build relations, and
Exactly.
And you can see it goes in the past. Space was an area of competition. Yes, it was an area of competition. One will say that it's still an area of competition. Maybe the components, maybe the players are a little bit different, but it's an area of competition.
Right.
But again, if you have a competition, you have a partnership as well.
Absolutely.
We need to find those partners, and we need to work together.
Absolutely. Talking about, partnerships for a moment. I know that in addition to the agency, you're also involved in running these space conferences. I think in collaboration with the Ramon Foundation. And I was looking, I think, at the poster from 2022, where one of the guests there, actually had on the show last year, Dr. Nita Levon from Olive Farms, talking about all the interesting things
Yep.
they're doing with cell culture and artificial meats and all that stuff. Clearly important for how we eat when we get up there and start putting bases on the moon and Mars and beyond. At the same time, sort of the dual use, focusing down here on ultimately how we feed a growing planet. It's just one interesting example of dual use. And people that question, well, why are we spending so much money up there? Well, because there's a lot of important things that does for us. Talk a little bit about dual use, if you would, because I think sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle. Yes, we are exploring Jupiter, but all these technologies clearly have important applications for us down here.
Dual use, it's interesting because there is a dual use for the term dual use.
Right.
Okay, dual use could be the use of technology from space to Earth or from Earth to space. That's one dual use. Another dual use is civilian military dual use.
Sure.
So you use the term dual use twice, which is interesting. But I totally agree with you. I think what we found is because of the unprecedented technology acceleration of space, we start to understand that we can reach space relatively easy, and by accessing space, there is a new market, or at least there is a new market that is open for us. The fact that we have zero gravity or low gravity bring us to another world of opportunities. And again, it goes to the triple P of the name of the show: progress, potential, and possibilities. There is new possibilities in the fact that you are in an environment that it's zero gravity or low gravity. You can produce things that you cannot, or it's very, very expensive to produce in Earth. Now, first of all, what we need to do, and this is the phase that we are in right now, is understanding. Okay, so what is more tangible? What is more real? Pharmaceutical issues are more real. Yes, we can produce, maybe we can produce things in space that we cannot produce here on Earth.
Yep.
Food could be very, very interesting.
Yep.
I believe that we'll have another areas that related to 3D printing. The fact that you can use zero gravity or low gravity will bring you to an area that you can build things that it's much more expensive. Yeah. So the whole concept is, okay, let's use the fact that it's much easier to reach to this environment and understand how we can affect life here. So Aleph is one example. We have Space Pharma in Israel that doing their effort to manufacture pharmaceutical components back in space, and they are not the only one. There is another very interesting company in Israel named Grignonics that they are trying to develop again food that will be that you can basically manufacture in space. And by doing that, you understand that you can do it in a much more efficient way here back on Earth. So there is a lot of effects. All of them were relying on the basic fact that space is accessible, or it's much more accessible than it used to be. So the dual use, is something that, again, I think the one that will drive it forward is the industry. The commercial entities will drive it forward. What we need to do, again, because it's still the whole ecosystem is still infant, what we need to do as a government entity is to push them, to give them the opportunity, give them the umbrella to be able to operate there, and then the commercial entities will bring us, humanity, to a better place. So we have a role. They cannot do it, at least in Israel, they cannot do it without governments, but once they'll be able to do it, all of us will be able to enjoy it.
Yep. And on that note, you mentioned a few times throughout the show that space is expensive. These projects are expensive, but putting that aside for a moment, if I was to give you $10 trillion tomorrow, what are some of your fantasy projects? I mean, what else are you interested in? Are you interested in permanent bases on Mars, space hotels, floating cities on Venus? What are your fantasy projects that if you didn't have to care about money, that you would like to see done looking out in the coming decades?
Yeah, I think permanent bases on Mars, as you know, as a goal, is probably the ultimate because first of all, I believe we'll reach there one day. But I cannot even imagine the effect of humanity once we'll be able to reach there. And go back. I think it's like 500 or maybe 510 years ago.
Hmm.
Magellan, okay,
Mm.
Magellan, who's the first one to circle, our small planet. His interest was basically to find a better way to do business, actually,
Hmm.
and basically he changed the world.
Yeah.
And if we'll be able to reach there, and we will. Just imagine what happened to our small planet. What obstacle we need to overcome. So first of all, I think that's fascinating.
Hmm.
I will love to be one of those guys that will reach Mars. I guess it won't happen in my time life, but maybe. But looking at the history implications of that, and if you're telling me, okay, you've got the money, budget is not an issue, we can really change the world if we'll be able to reach there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the answer.
I'll look around for the extra pocket change around here after the show. Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
or what's coming up? You had the conference in 2022. Any other what's happening for 2024 that we should know about? Obviously, you're going to be announcing a bunch more collaborations, but any other public facing things happening in terms of conferences, talks you're going to be giving, places that we could run into you possibly and meet you on the space tech circuit somewhere on the planet. Anything else that I missed
Um,
that's going to be happening? Please
so
take the
so
floor.
so we're gonna have the Ramon conference, the Israeli Space Conference. Actually, the last January 31st, the last
Okay,
week
it's
of
coming
January.
up. All
For the
right.
yeah, it's coming up for the 19th times. It's after the name of Ilan Ramon,
Yep.
the first Israeli astronaut. As you know, Israel is running through difficult times. We're facing unprecedented terror actions against Israel. But nevertheless, we decided to have this conference within the situation we are here right now because we believe that the story of space is very relevant, even in those days. Okay, so we're going to have this conference. Yeah, we understand it's a different situation, but we're going to have this conference. It will be more related, I think, internally to Israel, but it's still going to happen. And of course, we're going to be part of the Space Symposium in Colorado and the IC and other those global international aerospace events. We're looking forward to another project that we didn't highlight in this show yet, which is called Ultrasat.
Okay.
Ultrasat is a telescope. It's
All right.
ultraviolet telescope that will be situated in full west, in geoposition, looking from space to space to allocate those phenomena such as supernova.
Mm.
It is a little bit different than the James Webb because it's focused to those specific phenomena. It's going to be in ultraviolet, and all the data will go down to the Weizmann Institute. Now, the telescope is actually it's on building right now. Hopefully, we'll be able to launch the telescope by the end of well, I guess it will be by the end of or in the mid of 27. So it's ongoing. It's ongoing project. It's again, we're talking about cooperation. So it's we are with a cooperation with DESI, the German entity.
Yep.
They are part of the project, and of course with NASA. But just imagine a group of scientists receiving dozens of times on a yearly basis supernova phenomena, or they're receiving 10, 12, 14 times a year data from such a very, very huge event happening in space. They're receiving the data and they're doing the research on it in the Weizmann Institute. Now that could happen within the 28, 29, 30 timeframe. So we are building that with the Weizmann Institute. We are moving forward. As always, it's not easy, but we are moving forward and hope we'll be able to declare a few issues on that regard during 24. And we're still moving. Again, the Tevel project that I just told you, I think we'll be able to launch those 9 nanosatellites by the end of 24. Just imagine the celebration of those 9 different communities in Israel doing the countdown and launching those 9 nanosats by the end of 24. I think that could be fascinating as well.
Yep.
And there is still more to come.
Well, we will definitely be staying in touch and hope to do a follow-up episode on these and a variety of other projects. And again, as mentioned for the audience, we only touched on a small sampling, and we'll put the link to all the projects in the bio of the website of the show. Apologize. Really, really amazing stuff. I just I take my hat off to you and wish you the best with all of this as you continue to championing these programs. Again, for everybody that is going to be listening to this particular episode of our show across the various podcast networks or watching on our YouTube channel, again, you've been spending time with Brigadier General Uri Oron, Director General, Israel Aerospace Agency, part of the Ministry of Innovation, Science, and Technology of Israel. Uri, again, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk to us for a little while about everything you're up to. Obviously, thank you for what you do. And as we like to say here on our show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow and inspire the next generation via what you're doing. It's a really great story.
Thank you, Ira. Thank you so much.
Great having you.